Hello, and welcome back to Black River Paranormal Investigations. I'm your host, Rich Hardway. In tonight's podcast, I want to talk about uh, the inner feelings that people have. Uh, I can only talk about my own, obviously, but I believe most people probably can relate to this. If not, leave me your comments and tell me that you don't feel this way or notice this about you. But throughout my life, I've always had this, we'll call it your inner voice, right? So your conscious, maybe something that tells you you should or you shouldn't do something, or you get a feeling maybe of you better leave a certain place or not go somewhere. So I noticed this very young as a child that I had this, what I call spirit guide. And I didn't know what to call it until years later when I read a book by Sylvia Browne. I'll come back to that. But um, no matter, it seemed like what I was doing or where I was, or if anything was shady, it seemed like, something on my right shoulder would be whispering in my ear, telling me some advice, like, let's get out of here. Or the one I find interesting was it was never like, I need to get out of here. It was always like, you need to get out of here. And I'll give you some examples. So, you're a teenager and you do teenager things. You're out drinking with friends who are also teenagers, and nobody's supposed to have booze, but you're getting pretty lit. And all of a sudden, something's like, hey, you need to go. And so I've always been one to listen to that. I is that a gut feeling? Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But uh, something was like, you need to get out of here. And I'd be like, well, I'm taking off, guys, blah, blah, blah. 15 minutes later, they get busted by the cops. Or you're in a car and it stops someplace, you're with friends and they've been, you guys have all been drinking, and the car stops and something tells you not to get back in the car, and then later on the car gets wrecked, but you're not in it. One time I was in the car and it was winter time, freezing outside, like 30 below wind chill factors. And they put the car into somebody's front yard, snowing like crazy. But everybody's sitting in the car. Nobody wants to get out of it because it's so cold. And I'm like, you know, something told me to get the hell out of there. And so I'm like, well, I'm leaving, guys. And I elect to take off walking rather than sit in the car. And in that scenario, if I wouldn't have walked and got out of there and got to a place to make a phone call to my home, we'd all froze to death in the car. There's no way we wouldn't have. But just throughout my whole life, I've had this, and it started as a very young child, and it continued all the way up until today. There's just something would tell me it's time to quit a job, find a new one. I'd make a jump, and the place I was at would be out of business in 6 months. That happened multiple times. And I'm just curious if anyone else out there has something like that where you think maybe somebody's guiding your life. Well, back to Sylvia Browne. So in the 1990s, late 90s, I read a few Sylvia Browne books. And one of them, it talked about having a spirit guide. She talked about what happens is we'll call it heaven, you're up in heaven, and you decide to come down to the world. And you're coming to live an experience. And if you think about it, your life probably has some type of theme to it. If you really look back, Maybe you're handicapped. Maybe you've experienced racism, just different things. And you've come back. Most people have been here multiple times. This is where we get the old soul. Someone's an old soul because they've lived multiple lives on Earth. Well, what you have is you have a spirit guide, somebody who you sit down and you chart your life with. You're going to be born here. You're going to go to school here. You're going to experience this here. You're going to work here. All these types of things. And your spirit guide will never come to Earth to run through one of their experiences as long as you're here. Where they talk about it being a blink of an eye, in the spirit world, our time down here is a blink of an eye. Down here we make our way through life. If we're fortunate, we've been here 80 some years and we've experienced what we, hopefully we experience what we set out to experience. And then you go back up to the spirit world, and maybe your spirit guide comes down and you track and keep them on track. And that's what I feel that is. It's your spirit guide keeping you on track to what you're supposed to be doing down here on your journey. She brought up deja vu moments where all of a sudden you'll have deja vu, and that's like a checkpoint that, you feel like you've been there before. Well, you have, because you planned that you were going to be here. I remember one time I got a new job, and to get to the job you had to cross a lift bridge that went over the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland. And the moment I crossed that bridge, I had such a huge deja vu moment. I almost wrecked the car. But I knew I had never, ever been on that bridge or on that street or even in that section of Cleveland in my life. So, but she talked about that in her book. And when I read that, I kind of reviewed my life and was like, this makes sense, because it seems like I've always had this guiding spirit that keeps me out of harm's way or out of trouble, or helps me determine which way to go. I remember one time I got in a car. I had been, a place I worked at went out of business, and 3 days later I had been hired at 3 different places. And that morning when I literally got in a car to head for work, I was unsure of which place I was going to go. But as I got in the car and I started down the road, something started telling me about, this place only pays minimum wage but piece rate, and it's union, they'll be on strike. They're always on strike. And then this other place, had a shady reputation. They went through a lot of people. But then there was the third place, which is what I ended up going, had been around for a long time and paid better. And so that's where I ended up going that morning. Now, for me, probably from the time I had reached maybe 10 or 12 years old, I had determined that my spirit guide was my dad's brother, Dale, who I'll talk about a lot more when we get later on in these stories. But Dale had died in a car wreck in 1962, and I was born in 1967. And I've just had such a strong connection with Dale that it's unexplainable. I'm carrying his picture in my wallet as a teenager. I'm often at his grave marker, taking care of his gravestone, and just have a real pull. And I could be wrong. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but I just kind of always felt like if there was such a thing as a spirit guide guiding me, that it was probably him. I guess someday maybe I'll find out. But let me know in the comments if you feel like your life has a running theme to it where you're trying to overcome something, or if you feel like you've had a past life. I believe maybe that's one reason people have fears. Fear of heights. Maybe in a past life you fell to your death. Fear of guns. Maybe you've been in a war. Maybe you've been shot or something. Just different type of phobias that we have. I know that on the inside of my left knee, I have a birthmark that looks like a wound from a black powder musket ball, maybe Civil War or Revolutionary War or something, that goes through my knee. And that knee has always had a little bit of annoying pain to it for no reason. But if you look at that mark, it's the perfect size for like a 62 caliber musket ball going through. But let me know if you experienced anything like that in the comments. And if you really want some good reading, find yourself the books that were written by Sylvia Browne. Absolutely fascinating. Anyway, till next time, take care.